From the first scribbles on ancient scrolls to the digital pages of today's bestsellers, the world of literature has captivated readers for centuries. Opening a book is like unlocking a gateway to a new world, a place where the imagination soars and stories come alive with every turn of the page. The excitement builds as you eagerly open the cover, and for the next few hours you're transported to a universe of adventure, drama, wisdom, or wonder. Whether you're seeking an escape or simply just a good story, books provide a timeless escape, and the art of storytelling is just one that I just am so interested in. If you love to read, you're going to love today's show. Our guest is an acclaimed author who has spent years crafting stories right about things here in Detroit that capture the hearts and minds of readers around the world. So taking the Motor City beyond. Welcome to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson. We're right here on the campus of Madonna University, and I'm very excited to welcome Karen Dybis to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. So, what was the first thing that you can remember writing and getting very excited about?
I was the classic kid who, when teachers would have us do a writing assignment, if I got even the least amount of praise, that convinced me I had to be a writer. So from the start, I always knew I wanted to work for newspapers, I wanted to write books, like I had all these lofty goals for my career.
Oh, wow. So what is the first book that you wrote?
Oh my goodness. So first book like that got published, or first book that...
Oh, well, both. Now I want to know both.
No, I'm the classic, you have bad drafts in a drawer somewhere. So I've done very successful nonfiction that is about Metro Detroit, local history books, and then a lot of bad fiction that will never see the light of day, so don't worry. But that's also about Detroit. There's so many stories to tell in this great place that we live, so I've had a lot of fun with it. But the first book was the Ford, Wyoming Drive-In.
Which we talked about, and I have been. So why? What was it about that location that you just said, you know what, this story needs to be told?
Well, I had luckily been assigned a freelance story from the Detroit Free Press about a drive-in in Traverse City area in Honor, Michigan, called the Cherry Bowl.
I've been there too.
Great drive-in. Yes. Super original. A lot of the old elements that make drive-ins great, they still have. And so all these drive-ins across the nation were being transformed from film, you know, the big canisters, to digital, and Toyota was sponsoring a lot of that conversion. Very expensive. So I'd written an article about the Cherry Bowl winning that grand prize, so to speak, from Toyota. The History Press reached out to me and said they were doing books on drive-ins across the nation, and they wanted me to do the book in Michigan, but not on the Cherry Bowl, but on the Ford, Wyoming in Dearborn, which I knew nothing about. Had literally never been there before I got assigned to write a whole book about it. But I decided to jump in. I'd figure it out as I went, accepted the role of figuring out how to tell the story of a building, basically. You wouldn't think it'd be so fascinating, but it's a great movie history because you have a original owner who built the place and then sold later to a family here in Metro Detroit where the dad helped open the Fox Theater, and they own movie palaces, basically, all patterned after like French royalty, or, you know, they had like art moderne style, like very in the eras that those theaters operated. So it was a super fun story to write, learning about all those ways that the Ford, Wyoming kind of cemented itself as the living room of Detroit.
Oh, I love the living room of Detroit. I love that phrase. So, gosh, how do you get to be good at storytelling? Because let me tell you, my stories, and my family would tell you this, I'm a linear storyteller, and I go chronologically, like this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, the end. How do you get to be a captivating storyteller, and how do you formulate those stories into your books?
Well, I still think you're on the right track, though, because I am a linear storyteller, because most readers prefer that. They want to know what happens next, and it has to make a sort of sense. So in the writing of these books, I had to figure out who were the people, and had to find the families. So I've written a book about Detroit-style pizza. And then again, how can you write a whole book about a style of pizza? Well, I did it through the lens of these were the family-owned businesses in Metro Detroit. And there were 3 generations, or 3 waves, as I called them. So I had to kind of formulate what would make this interesting to anybody who might pick up the book off the shelf and try to figure out a way to take it from 1946 up to today. So I think you can do that. You just got to be super detailed. You've got to look for maybe some humor to throw in. And so I try to always layer all those different elements in the books. What would make it so that if someone could tell the story themselves, what parts would they repeat? And they're short little books, So there's not a lot of room to get too wordy or too complicated. So I tried to just give the best and the highlights so that this part of Detroit history, whether it be the potato chip companies that were
Right
here,
here, look at that.
The history of the drive-in in Metro Detroit, because we had an early history of that, but also for the pizza, that we have an established style named after our city. How did those things happen? How did A get to B to C? So that really was the enjoyable part, was figuring out how to tell it, how to make it interesting, and then how could someone else tell it to a friend or a family member.
I looked at your Better Made book, which we have in front, which just the cover, it's like iconic Better Made, right? Gets me so excited. Like I could just taste the delicious chips when I saw the cover of your book. And then as I flipped through, I saw the pictures again of just what you're describing, the family and how this business came. How long did it take you to write this book?
Now, Better Made, I did not give myself enough time.
Okay.
Because potato chips are perfectly fascinating, to be honest. And I still am researching and learning more just as I meet people or I experience more about Detroit and the companies that were made here. But what I loved about it was figuring out the family story, because again, two families owned it. How did they get started? What did they do? And there's so many different potato chip brands that were in Metro Detroit. So we had to kind of narrow that down.
From your book. I mean, from the website too, I was looking and I was like, wait a minute, I don't remember the names of these. I mean, they were before my time, but who knew we were just this mecca of chips?
Yes. And those old stories still pervade even today. I read something the other day about another potato chip brand where they were bragging how Michiganders eat more potato chips than anywhere else in the nation.
Had no idea.
Supposedly, pound upon pound. And I was like, doing the research for the book, looked into that, and really it was a owner of a potato chip brand made a number out of thin air and started using that in his marketing. So that actually dates way back, but it has no basis in reality other than we do have the best made chips, I would argue, better made. But we also have price competition because Lay's is always reducing its prices to try to drive better made, maybe not out of business, but make it a little more challenging. So with the prices low and lots of variety, because we got Downey's, we've got Great Lakes, all these different great local brands, we just have more to eat. And we're willing to do that to support our favorite local companies.
Well, I'm going to let them run and get some chips on the commercial here. But when we come back, we're going to hear more from Karen Dybis and all the great, cool stories that she's going to tell you. Stay soon.
Kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
So we were walking to school.
I started thinking about lunch. Mom packed me turkey and cheese.
She's
I really
smart.
want cheese pizza.
Sometimes her mind wanders.
We should have a sleepover.
I remember saying, Laura?
I think I heard Mom say something.
The sign says don't walk.
Sometimes it's so overwhelming.
I really hope she doesn't have
I really
another
hope I
bad
don't
day
have another bad day at school today.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. Go to understood.org, a free online resource with support and tools to help your child thrive.
So my uncle calls and he says he's dizzy and he's losing his balance. I'm like, Unc, you want me to take you to a doctor? He's like, no, I'm gonna look up the symptoms. I said, your symptoms are you're dizzy and you're losing your balance. So he said, I can't get on the internet because my arm is numb. I said, well, use your good arm and dial 911. Stroke's no joke. If you or someone you love is showing symptoms of stroke, don't wait because it might be too late. Dial 911. Time lost is brain lost.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson. Joining me today is author Karen Dybis. So moving from books, let's talk about this. You've got all these books now, they're out in the world and everybody knows about them, but there had to be a time where you were just sharing your writing with someone outside your family. Do you remember that? What it was?
This is a classic how I think people get into journalism type story, in that I was a quieter kid. And not clinically shy, but pretty close, like carried a book with me to all my classes so I wouldn't have to necessarily chat with people. And joining the high school newspaper took me out of my shell. And it really forced me to develop a personality that could talk to other people, get to know their stories, and really learned how to be more of an extrovert, sort of change in that perspective. And so when I got into college, joined the student newspaper there, interned all sorts of places, including the Kalamazoo newspaper, as well as the Mackinac Island Town Gazette, kind of a thing. So Mackinac Island has a little newspaper for the tourists. And that got me into my first jobs. So I worked everywhere from Adrian's newspaper to then Pontiac for the Oakland Press, and then the Detroit News, where I was lucky enough to work in the business department and covered everything from Kmart to Jacobson's to, you name it. I was the retail reporter for that newspaper. So it really broadened me, taught me more about the city, and got into history as part of it, because you can't work in Detroit without realizing just how special place it is. And it really expanded who read my work. Got a lot of feedback when you work at newspapers, both good and bad, and you have to you have to work that in, let's put it that way. So I have been edited by the best, and definitely don't get too concerned about criticism, but I do try to use it to build and become a better writer.
Do you remember, was there any kind of turning point where you really felt like you had found your voice, or you had found what it is that, like, this is who I am as a writer?
Yeah, interestingly, I would say it's in the last, let's say, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So I think journalists are always somewhat of a neutral party. We try to be objective as much as you can be as a living human being. And so it was when I got to write more of the things I wanted to write as a freelance writer. So went off on my own when I had a family, and still worked for newspapers and magazines here in Metro Detroit, but now I've opened it up to other publications, even nationwide.
I saw that, yeah.
So done a little bit of everything. So I write about real estate for U.S. News and World Report, or I write for a jewelry trade magazine quite a bit now. So these are topics that I never thought I could have any expertise in, but it's such an enjoyable thing, because again, it's about finding the story, helping people express who they are with the words that I will share about them, being collaborative in that storytelling as well, and open to what their ideas are. So I feel like that helped me develop that I love family business, that I love small business, that I love women-owned business especially. So I could kind of get into that area. And then I wrote a book as part of this time called The Witch of Delray. And I feel like that is the most important thing I could have written, about a case where a person had to go to trial twice for something that was a first-degree murder charge. And there were people that were still using her stories and acting as she had been guilty all these years, that she had done everything she was accused of, when in fact this very real person that lived here in Metro Detroit had been found innocent by a jury. So I kind of felt like I righted a wrong and made her reputation more accurate against some of the tours or bus tours that do history around the area that always had her as a villain. So I feel like those kind of experiences where I got to really work with people and tell their stories and have input from family, that changed who I was and how I wanted to write the news or share what I could do as a writer with people.
And that journalistic beginning and then going into telling these stories, that is something that there's so much interest in those stories these days. So it's interesting, you saying that you've kind of found your stride, and the popularity, I imagine, has followed too, because it seems like, again, everybody wants to know what's the true story. There's the myth or the misconceptions, but you're there to say, hey, no, this is what really happened.
Yeah, that's why I think having like podcasts and true true crime television shows or just people's insatiable curiosity for taking characters from the past and bringing them forward, I don't think there's ever going to be an end to that. Like the New York Times, I think it was, is doing an amazing project where they're going back to the women and people of color who might not have gotten obituaries at the time that they lived, and being like deep dives into those individuals and their contributions to society and what their lasting impact was. So to be able to not, as Malcolm Gladwell would put it, like revisionist history, like we're not going to change it, but maybe add to it and show the different angles of it. And I think those kind of storytellers that are helping fill out more detail. Like, do we really understand everything about Monica Lewinsky? Do we really know Tanya Harding's true, impact? These are pop culture individuals, but I think you could do it to any lens of someone in politics, someone in business, history, whatever, and always giving that chance of what did we not know then that we do know now, and making it a well-rounded story, I think is a great thing that's happening now, and I think is going to continue in the months to come and years to come.
Well, and giving voice to that, sometimes voiceless. Like I think about how I felt when I read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and just, I couldn't believe I literally, just remember sitting back in my chair thinking, how did this story take this long to tell?
Yeah.
And so hearing some of and I know we'll talk about The Witch of Delray for sure, because when I saw that was one of the books you wrote, I was like, oh, I haven't heard about this. I'm so interested in this story. I can't wait to hear that. And it sounds like you really enjoy giving voice to that as well. So we have to take another break, but we'll be right back and learn a little bit more about Karen Dybis and the work that she does and what it's like to be a writer. Stay tuned.
Welcome home, man.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education. What are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else?
Or will you dare do something different?
Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills.
The smarts?
Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget.
That'd be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
I present to you Algebra 2, Foreign Languages, and finally, Biology. Who among you will step up to their challenge?
Me.
Yeah, I'll do it. Me too. Sign me up.
Take on the tough classes now. You need them to prepare for college.
When life's this hard, it's no wonder 7,000 students drop out every school day. Visit boostup.org and help kids in your community stay in school.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson, and I'm joined by author Karen Dybis. We were talking during the break about, being a writer. So what are some of the misconceptions and myths about being a writer?
I think that ideas just flow everywhere and interestingly to you. Like one of the most common questions I get asked is, what's your next book? And I'm like, I just finished this one. Can I celebrate that I accomplished one finished task on my to-do list? So I'm always open to ideas, though. That's what I always try to tell people is if you have an idea for a book, share it with someone who might already want to write them like me, or, you know, a lot of people have it in them to write a book, and that it's hard or impossible. It is definitely a long slog that puts you in front of a computer screen probably for months, if not years on end. But the joy of creating something like this, or as Hemingway put it once, I think it was him who said something like, if you just write one true sentence, it is worth all that time and trouble that you put into it. So I think the myths are that we're all curmudgeons who ignore our spouses and just care about the words and not people. But I think that it's about uplifting the people you love and the communities you love. I wanted to write, for example, that Detroit-style pizza book to cement Detroit's pizza history, that no one else in any other place could say they make what we make here or copy it without giving that very important description of Detroit as part of the name. You know, really honor the people and the place that we're in. So I think that has always been worth the time and the effort to go into each of the projects or whatever I do day to day. Like, just make sure that we're celebrating the best that people are doing in their everyday lives.
Well, I appreciate you saying that about honoring people, and I go back to, you know, the book that we have here, The Witch of Del Rey, and as we talked about during the break, you know, this story that's out there that's like, you know, what happened, and then when you dig in, you find out, oh my gosh, this is really a story of discrimination. Like, this is a story of people that were fearful and benefited or profited from that.
Yeah.
So what did it feel like to find that? Do you remember the moment when you realized, like, oh my gosh, this is not the story that they've said it is?
That was one of the most exciting moments in the project, was going to the Archives of Michigan in Lansing. And you have to be signed in, and it's a very almost like a quiet room where you're not allowed to have a handbag. You're not allowed to have a pen. You can only use pencil because of people who have stolen precious documents or who've destroyed things. Unfortunately, that's the way archives have to be set up. And I had requested the case file for the Witch of Del Rey. I had been told there was some paperwork left from her 1930 case and then her 1940s case. And the banker's box was brought up, and the archivist set it down and opened the lid, and then he gasped, like audibly, just like, as he opened the box. And I thought, oh no, it's empty. There's going to be nothing for me to have as research for this, and I'm going to be completely on my own trying to figure out this story. And when I asked him what was happening, he said it's the opposite. Not that the box was empty, but he pulled out a stack of papers about this high. And the attorney who had represented the witch, Rose Veras, in her second trial, had pulled together all this documentation, and that had somehow survived all of the ups and downs of Detroit court life, let's say, like files being moved here or buildings flooding or whatever had happened. That stack of paperwork kind of gave me a guide to what happened, why it happened, and some behind the scenes things that you couldn't have gotten if you only read the story in the newspapers of the day, because we had yellow journalism or tabloid journalism even then. So there was all these exaggerations about her, and of course rumor mongering in even the neighborhood. Even up to today, people talk about her still as this kind of like negative factor in the neighborhood, or someone who's meant to scare children to go home before the lights turned on. So she very much still had kind of a hand in modern Detroit. There were drinks named after her every Halloween, on drink menus at some bars. And so to be able to really delve deeply into, you know, what happened in Detroit in the 1930s that led her to be convicted, I think unjustly, of first-degree murder. And it was everything from hatred of immigrants because, you know, they're taking jobs, to confusion over people who didn't speak English as their primary language, because she spoke mostly, if not all, Hungarian.
And this is the 1930s. So wait, you're telling me all these things you're talking about, they're not new.
Not new.
We've had these things for quite a while.
And political intrigue. You completely nailed it in that there was the worst political scandal in Detroit history, way beyond any scandals that are of modern time, that got more than 100 people arrested and convicted of everything from bribery to tax evasion, and took down the mayor, the sheriff of Wayne County, the prosecutor, you name it. And that happened all in the course of this trial that I was trying to really dig into. So to be able to bring all those characters back to life, and to find out what happened to them after even the trial ended was a magnificent research journey. Who knew I could have that much fun with truth?
For sure. So where can people find your books? Where can they go to find you? Because I got to get this one, I know for sure. Where can we find it?
I am very, very lucky to have people support the books, and everything from City Bird in Detroit. The Lynn family has consistently held the books there for sale. BookBeat in Oak Park, Source Booksellers. It's of course available online, and so people can go to the major bookstores there and check it out. But I do a lot of book talks in the area for libraries as well. So if you see me come into your local library, I tell the stories behind the books, and then I always have a few to share, or you can sign and give as a gift to Uncle Harry if you don't know what to get him. You can get him a book about potato chips and include a bag of Better Made, and you're all set.
I love that you're talking about our local bookstores and local booksellers too, because how important is it for us to, again, promote that. And I know we're in the digital age, but there's nothing to me like holding a real book and just curling up with one of those, especially if it's a cold or hot Michigan day. So
Sure.
Karen, it's been just such a wonderful experience getting to know you. Thank you for sharing your stories with us and with our audience.
Yeah, thank you. This was a delight. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in to Celebrate Michigan, where we, again, share the stories of things that are happening in this wonderful region. We love having you as viewers, and we'll see you next time.